To walk down the driveway of Vera's home is to know without doubt that it is the home of a gardener. Last Friday, her apricot rose on the driveway was at its peak. Its beauty, it was laden with a mass of blooms, caught my eye when I walked in. But then your eye catches the vistas down the side path where a lush retreat beckons, full of plants of every size and every description, a large palm, a couple of large palms right in the centre, lots of mature plants around underneath, hanging plants, zygocactus. It's a garden, isn't it, to lose yourself in. The back veranda of our home too is a myriad of pots and hanging baskets, a place to propagate young cuttings, a place to nurture less resilient plants, a place to potter to your heart's content. Gardening was Vera's love and her dedication, and she most certainly had a green thumb. And I'm sure she would be very pleased with the garden that you've all created for her today. But the love which she bestowed on her plants in the garden in a way mirrored the care that she had provided to hundreds of patients to whom she'd given support and reassurance in the many years of her nursing. It had been a constant thread in her life, hadn't it? Only coming to an end with retirement as the months of COVID began. Box Hill Hospital had tried their best to encourage her to continue, but her mind was made up. It was time. But in the end, sadly, time would become very short for Vera. Her health hadn't been good, diabetes had made its presence felt, and she'd been a smoker for much of her life. But it would be during an x-ray for her back that medical staff would notice a large tumour on her pancreas. Diagnosed in July of last year, she would undergo surgery and then she'd begin a regime of chemotherapy. The results were not as they'd hoped for, and despite then trying a more aggressive treatment, it soon became obvious that the battle was lost. Transferred from Maroondah Hospital to palliative care at Eastern Health, Vera would slip quietly from this world on the 7th of October. She was just still young, I think, at 73. Just a few weeks ago, Mark and Sean and a few close people farewelled Vera privately with some prayers that were offered by a Catholic priest. Today's a time for you as her larger circle of family and friends to gather and to remember Vera. It's a time to look back on the story of her life, to reflect on the woman that she was and all that she uniquely brought to this world. So sitting with Mark last week and then Sean, I asked them for some words to describe their mother. And of course, mention of her green thumb was high on the list. Ambitious was another word that was offered, and stubborn. But perhaps these are traits which underpin the ability to survive in this world, and Vera's resolve in that had most certainly been tested. One can only imagine the strength and resilience of character that she found growing up in an orphanage from the age of 2, migrating to a country so different in culture and climate and language on the other side of the world, training to become a nurse and a model, becoming a wife and a mother, and creating to the best of her ability the life that she wished for. Other thoughts followed of a woman who had been caring with a concern for everyone around her. Vera had her phone by her side constantly, and the boys have been surprised at just how many messages have been sent by the people in her life. We talked about her love of dressing up, of her love of fashion, a legacy perhaps from her modelling days. She always wore beautiful clothes, and the cupboards in her bedroom abound with many, many outfits that she just could not resist. But she had a lot of places to wear them. She enjoyed going to parties in earlier years. She loved dressing up for the races, visiting wineries and walking along the long rows of grapevines. And an enthusiastic grapevine of her own winds its way around the structure on her back patio. Although I think, Mark, it's about to be trimmed, isn't it? It's about to be brought into line. But so many stories and recollections of Vera are to be shared, aren't they? And you all come with your own memories of her. And there's going to be an opportunity during our service if you would like to share a short story or a short memory of her. Mark and Sean also hope that you can join them next door in the Candlebark room following our service for a cup of tea or coffee and some light refreshments. I welcome everyone also joining us via live streaming today. I hope that you feel very much connected to us here. So my name is Melissa Laird, and along with Nicole and Christina from White Laney Funerals, I welcome you most warmly. So let's turn back the clock, shall we? Going in search of that young girl that Vera was, following the path of her life and reflecting on the woman that she became. So it's impossible to place her story outside the context of history. But when she was born on the 6th of February in 1951 in Helsinki in Finland, it was still a period of great instability. The years of the Second World War had been times of great hardship, great loss for the people of Finland as Russia sought to annex the country in a pact with Germany in 1939. When the war ended in 1945, the country would industrialise quickly, and it did bring an economic prosperity to the country. But what would follow was a long period of hostile relations between America and Russia, and that went from 1947 right through until 1991, and it was, of course, known as the Cold War. And through that, Finland, on the border of Russia, would really struggle and seek to maintain a policy of neutrality. So Vera was born Virpi Hide Pokulani. Pokulani? How did I go, Mark? Pokulani. Pokulani. I don't speak Finnish and I do apologise. Her mother would be left to raise Vera and her two half-brothers, Saul and John. Her mother and father had separated when she was born. Her father went off to fight in Russia. And one can only imagine the hardship of raising three young children on her own. And so the difficult decision was made to place Vera in an orphanage when she was just 2 years of age, although her mother and her brothers and her father would visit from time to time. The orphanage would remain her home until she finished her schooling, but they were never years which Vera wanted to talk about. What a change of life for her then when her mother, her two brothers and Vera migrated to Australia in 1969. A long journey by sea, 6 weeks as they charted their way through the Suez Canal, across the Indian Ocean through to Fremantle, first in Western Australia and then on to Sydney in New South Wales. And it had been to the migrant camp at Bonegilla that the family would live before they'd settled in Queanbeyan. Vera would look after the house for our two brothers who were working at that time for the local bus company. Her mother had remarried by that time and she was also living in Queanbeyan, close to Vera and the boys. Vera had arrived with some fluency in English, and when she returned to school it would improve her English even further, and she completed year 10 there. She began her nursing at the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane, laying the foundation for a career spanning many years. But, as you know, Vera also loved fashion, and she would complete a diploma in modelling in 1974 at the Bambi Smith Model College and Television Studios. As we said, in later years, she always had lots of beautiful clothes, and her husband and son Sean would give her the nickname of Squirrel. life was busy in Queensland. Vera had a little unit with her friend Melanie, and she would be occupied both with nursing and with modelling. And I suspect that's some of the photos we have at the front there of her modelling days. Quite a beautiful young woman. In time, she returned to Queanbeyan. She lived on her own for a while, not far from her brothers. But the prospect of a job south of the border would see Vera relocating down to Melbourne, and she found employment at Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. Her skill and knowledge as a theatre nurse would come to benefit other nurses seeking to learn more in this field. And it was Vera who would run the session in the specialty area of plastics. And in one of those sessions, her path would cross for the first time with her good friend Lee. Her path would also cross with that of Wayne Hide. And Wayne had a little girl himself named Louise. A romance would develop between the two of them, and they married just before their new son, Mark, was born in July of 1983. A new home was born in Nunawading, and not long after Mark was born, Vera returned to nursing at Maroondah and at Knox Hospital, and she relied a lot on family and carers to look after Mark while she was working those shifts. 6 years later, a second son, Sean, was born in November of 1989. And while she did return to nursing for a little while after Sean, there were changes afoot for the family with a move to Kendal in New South Wales, where Wayne and a friend who was also his second cousin had plans of opening a nursery together. So the house in Nunawading was sold. Mark had just begun his prep years here in Melbourne, and he had to start a new school up in Queanbeyan. No, not Queanbeyan, in Kendal, sorry. And his mum would help out where she could. And Vera sought to return to her nursing there too, applying for a position at the Port Macquarie Hospital. But sadly, the business venture at Kendal didn't work out, and after only 18 months up north, Wayne, Vera and the boys returned to Victoria. The nursery business and their new home was sold, and it was a big setback for Vera and the dreams that she'd had for the future. So Wayne would make the decision to buy a new home in Wantirna South, and for Vera it would mean that she now needed to work full-time. She was welcomed at Mitcham Private Hospital, where she worked the night shift hours there as a theatre nurse. Mark, by this time, was in grade 2, and Sean would be placed in family daycare when it was needed. And the garden in Wantirna began to be established. Wayne was a landscaper and a gardener himself, and so there was a common interest which they both shared. It was a very social time of their life. As I said, Vera would work night shift hours, which freed up her availability to be around her family and her home. Time was spent tending the garden, growing veggies as well. Dinner parties were enjoyed with family and friends, and there were busy boys playing tennis and karate to keep up with. Vera also loved our cats. Her first feline had been a long-haired white cat named Mishka. Lucky would be another. There was Casper, who lived to be a very old cat indeed at 21 years of age. And there was a tortoiseshell cat named Anzac and an adopted kitten who answered to Samantha. Holiday times were times to be enjoyed too. When Sean had been a toddler, there'd been a family trip to Papua New Guinea and to Bali, and I'm sure many of you have seen the souvenirs from those trips hanging in the hallway of her home and on the walls. Vera would take Mark and Sean on her own to Vanuatu and to Fiji, to New Zealand. And then in later years, there were a couple of trips to Russia with Wayne and Sean, doing a tour of St. Petersburg, meeting Mark on the way back home in Thailand. Closer to home, there'd be trips to visit her friend Melanie when she lived at Flowerdale and Strathbogie. So she was a decent cook by all accounts, at baking in particular, and I know you as her work colleagues would find many of your birthdays celebrated with the cakes which arrived with her on the day. She made a mean sour cream cake, and in years past her pavlovas were a treat, and other tantalising memories of her sausage rolls and ricotta spinach triangles came to light when we were chatting the other day. Of course, our children continue to grow and make lives of their own. Mark made his own way, leaving home at 21. Sean started an apprenticeship when he was in year 10. But home would always be the place that they could return to when needed. Her hopes for her sons was that she just wanted them to be happy, to learn things about life as they went along, to make good decisions for themselves. Mark became a father and Vera a grandmother when his daughter Charlie was born in 2008. Vera would love the times that she took her granddaughter to playgrounds, or they'd go out shopping together, wouldn't they, Mark, looking at clothes? It became a bit more difficult when Mark and his partner went their separate ways, seeing less of Charlie and a new grandson Steele, particularly when the kids moved to Redcliffe in Queensland. But life was also to change profoundly for Vera. We can never know, can we, when we start out in life, just where the future's going to take us. Our challenge will be to continue to find meaning, to find purpose, sometimes in spite of what is, rather than because of what is. Vera would find herself a single woman again when she and Wayne separated in 2009. The house in Ponsford Avenue would remain her home, and she poured all of her energies into the garden. New plants would appear constantly, and the depth of what she knew about propagating cuttings and grafting plants continued to grow. Her garden was her passion, and it certainly doesn't feel like suburbia, does it, when you stand in its midst? But it was her dedication to her work also which carried her through this period of life. Of course, she had a mortgage to fund as well, and a life to support. So Vera had moved to Box Hill Hospital in a full-time capacity in the year 2000. And to make ends meet, she would work her 4 10-hour shifts there, and then she'd be available for agency work at hospitals all around Melbourne, working sometimes 6 days a week. Maroondah Hospital, Knox Private were regulars. She had a really strong work ethic. She was such a hard worker. And then there'd be holidays, travels around Australia with some of her workmates, sometimes visiting people that she knew. She travelled back to Finland, back to the country that she left as a teenager, but also touring through Switzerland and Sweden and Germany. In later years, she'd take herself to the movies, which were her delight, or she'd go to the National Theatre down in St Kilda, who would offer free tickets to first viewings of a show, or if they were trying to fill the theatre for a particular performance. She was a very hospitable woman, and many occasions were enjoyed with friends on her back veranda in the midst of all those hanging baskets, the baskets just provided a constant source of colour, whatever time of year it was. She also, Lee told me, loved going to the Yumcha. Of course, we're only just tapping into the many moments which have been part of Vera's story. In reality, we are a very complex mixture of the genetics that we carry from our past, the cultural heritage of the country of our birth, what we've learnt along the way, the choices which we've taken, the passions we've pursued, all of it coloured most definitively by the people that we've loved. It is the building of a life, isn't it? Layer upon layer upon layer. And so now comes the opportunity for those of you who've known Vera to share something of who she was, of adding some more colour to the woman that you knew. Sean, do you want to say a few words first?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean. I am the youngest son of Virpi Hide. Today, on the 6th of November 2004, just 30 days since her passing, we gather here, family, friends, colleagues, and all of those whose lives were touched by my mother, to honour and celebrate her life. Virpi was born on the 6th of November 1951 in Helsinki, Finland, during the final days of her winter, Her journey from Finland to Australia was one that saw her grow, thrive, and dedicate herself to caring for others. Mum chose to pursue nursing in Queensland, committing over 5 decades to a profession she held close to her heart. As a theatre nurse, she took on the demanding role of managing and organising supplies for a wide range of surgeries, ensuring each operation was prepared with precision and care. She knew, trained, and mentored many of you here today. Her attention to detail, high standards, and unwavering commitment set an example in the workplace. She leaves behind a legacy of compassion and professionalism, qualities that have profoundly influenced those who have had the privilege of working by her side. Her career in nursing also sparked a remarkable friendship with Lee, who shared her journey from the early days of training through to countless moments over 4 decades. Lee, thank you for being here today. Through everything, I know she treasured the memories, laughter, and steadfast support throughout the years. Mum's warmth and kindness extended well beyond her work. She had a gift of bringing people together, whether it was for a backyard barbecue, a full roast, or just a quiet meal. She loved cooking for others and creating a welcoming space for anyone who came through her door. Once a month, she would stay up late and bake small batches of cakes for treats for her colleagues, with her signature sour cream cake. Always a staff room favourite. It was her way of sharing joy and little comfort with those around her, offering some dedication to her friends and as she did her family and patients. We are especially grateful to many nurses and doctors who could take the time to pay respects to my mum today. I know it would mean so much to her to have you all here today. Yesterday, Australia celebrated the Melbourne Cup, a day my mum always enjoyed, with excitement and style. She would have dressed in her finest fashion, ready to attend as if on a parade. She loved the spectacle and the joy of the event, just as she loved any occasion where she could bring people together to enjoy life. Outside of her career, my mother found her peace and joy in her garden. Her backyard was a sanctuary of greenery, a true jungle adorned with palm trees and vines, while her front yard flourished with the blooming roses, daisies, and daffodils. She had a special talent for creating beauty, and true to her nature, was always sharing it. Her neighbours remember her generosity, as she often shared her homegrown produce, especially her lemons and limes, with anyone who might have needed them. She also cherished time spent with friends, whether at luncheons, dinners, events, or races. My mother approached life with a joy and vitality that was contagious. She treasured those friendships and delighted in every moment she spent with those she held dear. Before I close, I'd like to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to Lee, my mother's dearest friend, who helped us organise today's gathering. Thank you, Lee. Your friendship meant the world to her, and we are grateful for your support. And to Melissa, our celebrant today, and Lola, who currently isn't here today as the director. My mother held many roles: nurse, friend, neighbour, mentor. But to me, she was first and foremost my mother. And in that role, she was unmatched. To be her son has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. I know my brother Mark and I will miss her deeply, but we will carry her values, her strength, and her spirit forward with us. Rest in peace, Mum. We love you and will remain forever in our hearts. Thank you.
That was beautifully written and spoken, Sean, it was. Yes, yesterday was a beautiful day at Flemington, which she would have loved, but I don't think the roses at Flemington would have matched that apricot rose in her driveway the other day when I walked in. So, Lee, I know you're just trying to pull yourself together after those lovely words from Sean. You are. I've just given you a few moments. Why don't you come and tell us about your friend? Would somebody else like to go first? Breathe still.
I promise you, it won't be long. I just write it down because I might forget, that's all. So, when I think of Vera as a colleague, there's always one thing strikes me. Whenever Vera saw the nurses slacking off, she also asked them to do emergency Caesar setups. That's a familiar scene, isn't it? And many young nurses in our theatres will laugh at her, saying that we do not need that many emergency Caesar setups. Sometimes I would say no to Vera too. But deep down, I was inspired by Vera's professionalism and devotion to patients. As a friend, I found Vera always puts others first. I remember when we visit her sick at home, she would prepare some nice tea for us and making sure her house is warm enough for us. She also asked me about the lime tree, which she bought for me many years ago. Unfortunately, it didn't. It survived, but it's not blooming. Even when we took her to Yamcha a few months ago, she still insists to drive herself and pay for herself. Vera, you have a hard life. Let our Heavenly Father look after you and grant you eternal peace. Salam, my friend.
Lee's directing here. Is there anyone else, please? I love the laughter as the stories deepen, the knowing laughter amongst you all about who she was.
Our dear Vera. Everyone that knew her will say exactly the same things. She was generous, she was a great cook, fantastic gardener, and a hard and tireless worker. We worked together for on night duty for many years, and I don't ever remember her being sick. I don't think she ever took a sickie in her life. She was fantastic in all aspects of theatre nursing. She could turn her hand to anaesthetics, recovery, and of course scrub scout. The last could be a little bit of a problem. She was very mindful of budget, hospital budget. I occasionally scrubbed for a favourite surgeon, and I'd get everything out that I knew he would want. You won't need that, she'd say. Well, I really did. She was mindful of people's interests and would go out of her way to organise outings that included these. She knew I loved gardening, and she'd take me to nurseries that sold cheap or unusual plants. Her own garden was a mecca, and she'd press plants on you that she'd propagated. And I have many in my garden now, and each time they flower, I'll think of her. In fact, there's a couple of in a little bouquet I brought. Helen Pendlebury wanted me to say that she first met Vera at Repat, and Vera looked after her when she commenced and showed her the ropes. She also mentioned that she would sort of winkle her way into you telling her all about your life. but only in order to understand where you're coming from and lend a sympathetic ear in times of trouble. We know her own life was not always easy, and she met each challenge with a great deal of courage. Sean and Mark were her delight, and later her grandchildren. It was lovely to get to know the two of you, really was, and I understand why she was so proud. You're fantastic boys. Even though she gave you a hard time, your love and care for her in her last weeks was beautiful to see. When you brought in her beloved cat, Lila, she would smile, even though she was barely conscious at that stage. Initially, the cat was very anxious, but she would eventually jump up on the bed, curl up and go to sleep. And the last time was the day before Vera passed away, and she licked her hand, and I just cried. That's Lila. That's great. For myself, and I know some of her friends, it was a privilege to sit with her and bring her some care and comfort that she would have done the same for any of us. We'll remember you, dear Vera, with love and remain thankful for your friendship. You made a great difference in our lives and we miss you.
Tomorrow's going to be short and sweet. Yeah. Vera was one of a kind. She'd mobilise you, organise you, and you'd say, Vera, bugger off. We're all right. But she did it with all good intentions, really good intentions. I got to know her more after I retired, and she'd marshal me. We're going out. Oh, Vera, no, we're going out. It's this time, you're coming. Oh, all right. She came with us to the races, we tarted up, we looked good. Vera was one of the most generous people that you could ever meet. Her intentions were always for your well-being, her patients' well-being, and the staff she worked with. And, yeah, Vera, I'll miss you. What have you done with your garden? You should be planting the tomatoes now. Have you pruned this yet? No. Well, you need to. Vera, my garden's going to be immaculate for 2 minutes. And thank you very much to Sean and Mark for including me with some of the sitting with your mum and chatting. So, Vera, we'll miss you. You're just such one of the kind people that rose above all your own situations in life, which some of them were pretty crappy. Well, fail, Vera.
Yes, it's something we should remember, isn't it, in our kindness to each other, that we all come with good intentions. Before I get to Lee, is there anyone else who would like to share some thoughts? I think it's you, Lee.
That was beautiful, Robin and Laurie, for your lovely words. And yes, thank you, Sean and Mark, for having us here today. And thank you for everything you've done for your mum. I first met Vera when I commenced my theatre course at the Virpi Hospital, Heidelberg, in 1977. She was one of my course supervisors. She was in charge of plastics at that time. We kept in touch over the next 20 years or so, but it wasn't till we met up again at Box Hill Hospital that we became very close friends. We had many lunches and dinners at her place, enjoying her delicious home-cooked meals, walking around her amazing garden. We never left the gatherings without taking home a doggy bag. We enjoyed our race days at the Oaks, which is on tomorrow, with Robin and Marie and friends. But mostly today I'd just like to read out some of the heartfelt messages that were sent to me or are on her Facebook pages. Thank you. From Kate. The staff at Eastern Health Theatres mourns Vera's passing. You were an amazing scrub nurse and I learnt so much from you. Your family is in my thoughts during this time. Kate. From Joe. Rest in peace, Vera. You were a strong woman and a fighter to the end. Taken too soon. Sincere condolences to your family. Joe. She also was a colleague from REPAT. From Jenny. Vera was the one that started out from stood out from every other nurse that I have ever worked with. She had such high standards that not only did she expect others to adhere to, but she always led by the example. By Jenny. I will never forget your kindness to me when I started at Box Hill Hospital. Such a hard worker. Condolences to your family. Lisa. A gentle soul, you will be forever in my heart as a kind and faithful friend. Condolences to Virpi's family. Vicky. From Heidi. May you rest in peace, Auntie Vera. My condolences to your family. Vera has touched so many lives for the better. Heidi was also a colleague, but she called her Auntie Vera. Rest in peace. Such a strong-natured lady, beautiful person, brilliant nurse. You will be sadly missed at our general dinners. Peter, who's here today. Thanks, Peter. From Tracy. Vera, you were one of a kind, fantastic nurse. Good cook. You will be missed. Sympathy to your family. From Elkie. So sorry to hear. She was an amazing woman with so much life and knowledge. It was a blessing to have known her. Thoughts and prayers for her family at this sad time. Elkie. From Sam. I am so sorry to hear this news. She was a lovely woman to work with. Sending my deepest condolences to her friends and family. Rest in peace, Vera. Sam. Rest in peace, Mama Vera. You will be missed forever, Shiny. These are only just a couple of messages that were sent to us and on her Facebook, and I think it sums it up very well. What a very good friend she was. It was a very good colleague she was, and a nurse, and all the people here today, I think, will understand that. And thank you.
Well done. So strong threads, aren't there, as each of you have spoken, just building on what you all knew of her. Perhaps it's only when a life has come to an end that we truly understand the deep impact that they've had on our story and the people that we've become as a result. Perhaps that contemplation, perhaps that knowing is always there in some form, but loss is the great motivator. It forces us to put aside our thoughts of everyday life and bring into prominence those insights and those reflections of the woman that Vera was. It's one of the tasks, I think, of a time such as this. It's also one of the joys as we meander back through our memory and our shared storytelling, putting together the pieces of the picture, finding joy and gratitude in spite of our sadness as we say goodbye to someone that we've loved. The flickering light of the candle has long been a source of comfort and hope for us. Its bright flame reassures us of the continuity of life and of love. We're going to light some candles in memory of Vera today, in the warmth of the memories that I know you will continue to hold always. It's a bright light, isn't it, that you all carry forward. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Please join me, if you would care to, in the saying of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Have you ever stopped to consider how many millions of moments go to make a life? Moments of joy, of excitement, moments of happiness and wonder, moments of learning, certainly moments of challenge and understanding, moments when we're going to be frustrated, disappointed, fearful, moments when we have to dig deep, finding courage and dedication, and of course, moments of love. These have been just some of the moments in the life of Virpi Hide. And in closing, I share some words from Michael Leunig. God bless our contradictions, those parts of us which seem out of character. Let us be boldly and gladly out of character. Let us be creatures of paradox and variety, creatures of contrast, of light and shade, creatures of faith. God be our constant. Let us step out of character into the unknown, to struggle, to love, and to do what we will. Amen.
She's gone out of my life. I was wrong. I'm to blame. I was